Welcome, everybody, to today's regularly scheduled agenda meeting. Today is April 17th. We have 3 items on the agenda. I will start by calling the roll. Commissioner Partridge.
Here.
Commissioner Hom.
Here.
Commissioner Tuma.
Here.
And I am also present. A quorum is present, so we can start with the business for the day. Mr. Andringa, if you could just introduce the first item, and then we can bring folks to if folks who are going to be here for this matter, if you could come to the desk. But Mr. Andringa, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Sullivan and Commissioners. Today's first agenda item is docket number G-999/CI-21-135 in the matter of a commission investigation into the impact of severe weather in February 2021 on impacted Minnesota natural gas utilities and customers. Docket number G-008/M-21-138 in the matter of the petition of CenterPoint Energy, Minnesota Gas, for approval of a recovery process for cost impacts due to February extreme gas market conditions. Docket number G-004/M-21-235 in the matter of the petition by Great Plains Natural Gas Company for approval of rule variances to recover natural gas costs from February 2021. Docket number G-002/CI-21-610 in the matter of the petition of Xcel Energy to recover February 2021 natural gas costs. And finally, docket number G-011/CI-21-611 in the matter of the petition of Minnesota Energy Resources Corporation for approval of a recovery process for cost impacts due to February extreme gas market conditions. Question before the Commission today, questions are, should the gas utilities August 1st, 2024 annual compliance filings be accepted and approved? And should the Commission make any changes to future compliance filing requirements? No additional filings were made after the briefing papers were filed on April 9th. The staff has no further comment at this time, and the staff and parties are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll just start with the panelists just introducing themselves, and we'll just start from the left with Mr. Edstrom for Cub, and we'll just go down the line and get that out of the way.
Good morning, Chair Sullivan and Commissioners. I'm Brian Edstrom here on behalf of the Citizens Utility Board of Minnesota.
Good morning, Catherine Hinderly for the Office of the Attorney General, Residential Utilities Division.
Good morning, Nancy Campbell, and with me, John Kundert for the Department of Commerce.
Good morning, Lauren Steinhauser on behalf of Xcel Energy.
Good morning, Jason Luce with CenterPoint Energy, and Seth DeMeritt and Crystal DePuccio are on the interweb somewhere.
Good morning, Kristen Stasny on behalf of Minnesota Energy Resources Corporation, and online are Joylyn Hoffman-Malig and Josh Fieber on behalf of Minnesota Energy Resources.
All right, great. What we can do now is we're not planning opening statements, but what I would like to do is if we could just quickly hear from parties on the decision options that they would like. We can dispense with that, and then we'll get to Commissioner questions. And I'll start with Mr. Edstrom and Cub.
Thank you. We are open to decision options 1 through 4, and we support 7, 8, 10, 12, and either 13C or 14, but we are not opposed to 13C.
Great. Ms. Hinderly.
Thank you. We support 1 through 4, 6 through 8, 10, 12, and then 13C.
Ms. Campbell.
Yes, we support decision options 1 to 4, 6 to 8, and 13A.
Ms. Steinhauser.
Xcel supports decision option 3, decision option 11, and decision option 13B.
13B. CenterPoint.
CenterPoint's preferred are 1, 5, 11, and 13A, but we also have no objections to 6 through 10, we'd be okay with 12. We'd prefer one of the 13s, but A is our preference, but we're not opposed to B or C.
All right, thank you. Ms. Stasny?
Merck prefers decision options 4, 5, 9, 11, and 13A or B.
All right. Let's go to Commissioner questions. Commissioner Partridge.
Thank
You
you.
looked like you were queuing up and ready.
I do have a question ready. Well, thank
right.
you, Chair
Let's go.
Sullivan. Okay, my question, I would like a little bit of more information on the options under 13. And so I'll just tee this up for you all that I don't want this to be particularly burdensome. I want this to be clear that this is when we would want you to notify us. I am leaning towards this idea of 21 days, and here's why. And I'd like for those who oppose, which I understand are the utilities, and even the department has a different position, to just let me know. I don't think this is a really big issue likely, but I just wanted to put this thought out there that if we have gas prices that are over 5 times the expected filed PGA prices for 21 days straight, we would probably want to know about it, and we probably would know about it through informal channels or media. So it does seem like, while I hope that this doesn't happen, this seems unlikely, hopefully, and it would be unprecedented, I would want some sort of information to come to the commission before we allow for that to stretch on further. So could one of the parties explain to me why 21 days after the event would be problematic? Ms. Stasny, would you like to start?
Sure.
Excellent.
Thank you, Commissioner Partridge, for the question. I think your point is exactly correct from Merck's perspective. This isn't a significant issue, and if the Commission preferred to go with the 21-day option, I don't think the company would oppose that. However, the reason that we continue to support 13A or B, which we think are really similar, is so that our subject matter experts, the ones who are procuring the gas and ensuring operation of the system, can focus on those tasks during the entirety of the event rather than focusing on making this filing to the commission. I know the company is very good about providing notice to commission staff, the department, OAG, in the event that there is a price spike, so making sure that folks are aware that is occurring, but putting together a detailed filing that includes the details of the event, what the prices were, what steps were taken, and why those steps were reasonable and prudent. We want to make sure that we get you the best possible information on all of that reporting, and so allowing time after the event is over to compile that information is going to ensure, one, that our subject matter experts are focused on procuring gas, and two, that you're receiving the most detailed information.
I have it in my brain exactly opposite. I would think you would want 13C then for 21 days rather than a shorter 14-day.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. So the only rationale for the 14 days, it would be after the last day of the event, again, is to allow folks
rather
the
than
time.
21 days from the event. I gotcha. Okay.
Historically, these types of events have been relatively short-lived. I mean, it's a weekend, it's a long weekend, but every event is different, and so there is uncertainty in terms of what the next event may look like in terms of duration. So having the timeline start once the event is over does provide a little bit of additional clarity for the utilities in terms of when that clock starts and when we provide that report.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Partridge.
Chair Sullivan, thank you, Ms. Stasny. I understand that. That makes a lot of sense that you want to be able to provide more information in a filing. Still, I think some type of notice is, this order point doesn't specify what would be required in the filing, or I guess it does in the previous order, the February 17th, 2017 order. Okay, so I wonder if, and I want to hear from the OAG and see what, because this is something you prefer, would it be something where we could provide notice at a certain date and then a more detailed filing after the event has ended? Because it does feel to me like we want more timely information, especially in such an unprecedented situation where we might have extraordinarily high gas prices for, multiple weeks, that we would want a notice so that we could make a decision on whether there was something we should or could do.
Ms. Hinderly.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan, Commissioner Partridge. I think, just first off, we came at it from a slightly less apocalyptic way than you're coming at, but I think that's a really good point to flag. But I do just want to explain why we think it's important to have the first day trigger the timeline, and that's for the department and OAG and CUB who are looking at all four utilities. It's difficult for us to be responding on 4 different timelines if the event, quote unquote, ends at different times for the different utilities. So what we've seen when these price spikes have happened, luckily they have been fairly short-lived, but certain hubs have taken longer to return to more normal pricing. And so the beginning of the event tends to be pretty clear where everything spikes. The end of the event tends to be a less clear point in time. And so for, Great Plains or someone who's less heavily reliant on, Emerson or Ventura, their event might end more quickly than someone who's relying on the other hubs. And so that's the point of keeping it at when they start. That's our reasoning there. But we're happy to give folks a little bit more time. We did see that it was a struggle for the gas utilities to be responding to discovery from us, and to be compiling a report, kind of all at the same time. And so we're happy to give them more time. But I do think, if we are in a situation of prolonged increased prices, I think there's plenty of actions the commission could take to bring the utilities in to kind of explain themselves before even 21 days. I mean, if we're looking at over a week of price spikes, that's going to be a really concerning situation that I think the commission will want to take a look at, and we would want to take a look at too earlier. So I think there's multiple reasons to go with a clear beginning at the first day of the price spike versus waiting till the end of the event.
Commissioner Partridge.
I don't have any follow-up. I'm just thinking about it.
Okay. Commissioner Hom.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. I think we are not collecting this data just for the record. I think it has to have a real impact to the ratepayers. Being said, so personally, I do not have much preference on how many days because typically it's after the facts. After the fact doesn't help ratepayers. The key is whether utility has good hedging for the year, whether utility had a good demand entitlement procurement at the reasonable price. Without that, and just evaluating real-time price after the facts, I don't think that'll help ratepayers. Being said, what is the activity our utilities are taking when this price event is coming your way? I think a lot of time you can expect this coming your way. Is there any education going out to the ratepayers to conserve their energy consumption to save money, and then informing ratepayers that it can be significantly high if they keep consuming as used to be? To me, that's more important information than having this information after the fact. So for the utility, starting with the center point, what is your action in addition to these actions that Commission asked you to do for the hedging, annual hedging, demand entitlements, procurement process, and then what is the education you are giving to ratepayers in real time when this event is on your way?
Mr. Luce.
Chair Sullivan, Commissioner Hom, thank you for the question. With respect to the education of customers, we included in our filing some of the education materials that we do send out. We meet with the interruptible customers annually, educate them on what it means to be interruptible, what they can do, what they're expected to do, things like that. We also, when it gets when we see the weather forecasted to be extraordinarily cold, we do put out notices to all of our customers about the cold weather coming and what they can do to reduce their costs by lowering their thermostat and other actions they can take. If you had specific questions on what they do on the gas supply side, I would phone my friend, Mr. Puccio, for input on that.
Yeah, I mean, that question is, I think, more interaction between utilities and OAG and department. I think evaluating these things after the fact, once again, doesn't help much. I think it has to be prepared for the incoming winter. That's why you guys are filing demand entitlements, and hopefully you have a conversation with the department, OAG, or any other party who's willing to engage in discussion about your hedging strategy. Because we cannot discuss those in public forum because it's commercially very sensitive. So that means I think you may need to discuss this issue and assure that certain government agency, hopefully including commission, that you are doing this preparation and it is well founded by data and information. So yeah, I think if you don't have any information, you don't need to call a friend at this point. But I think at this time, my question is more focused on real-time education for the ratepayers. And then further question is, what is your interaction between department, OAG, or any other party who wants to engage in this discussion of the demand entitlement and gas hedging?
Mr. Luce.
Yeah, thank you, Chair and Commissioner Hom. And yeah, I do know we do meet annually on our gas procurement plan with the OAG, PUC, and I believe staff from the department attend that as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner. Oh yeah, Ms. Stasny.
Thank you, Commissioner Hum, for the question. I would echo a lot of what Mr. Luce said with respect to MERC. We have communications plans in place to ensure that we're communicating with customers to make them aware of steps that they can take to reduce their energy usage and reduce their bills. We have a communications plan in place for the event of pricing events to make sure that we're communicating with customers to conserve energy in those situations. Meeting with interruptible customers in advance of the winter to make sure that they fully understand their obligations to curtail fully and immediately if they're called upon to do so. Making sure that customers are providing us any necessary updates, including who their appropriate point of contact is for curtailments. And then in terms of, when a cold weather event is coming, ensuring that we're monitoring both weather notices as well as notices on all of the pipelines from which MERC takes service to make sure that we are aware of any pipeline notices that could impact service or could be an indication of pricing events or other concerns.
Ms. Steinhauser.
Thanks, Chair Sullivan. Commissioner Hum. We echo a lot of Centerpoint's points. We have an official communications plan in place, but for more detail on that, I would ask Richard Derryberry, who's on the phone.
Mr. Derryberry. The call is going unanswered.
He was having, I know he was having connection issues.
Oh,
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Yes, Mr. Derryberry,
Okay,
we can hear you.
I apologize. I'll speak louder. So NSP Xcel, very similar to what MERC and Centerpoint just described. We have regular communications with our customers throughout the winter, at the beginning of the winter, and regularly through the winter, offering winter tips through a variety of channels, social media channels, flyers and bills, and whatever communication means the customers offer us. We also do that, in my understanding, we also do that as a cold weather event approaches too, because that is a time where they may be more likely to pay attention to that very issue. So we do that as well, and we also meet with interruptible customers annually, explaining services and whatnot. We also communicate typically with staff before those events letting them know what things look like and whether there's challenges there. So all in all, very similar to what you've heard from the other utilities.
Commissioner Hom.
Yeah, thank you. I think that makes me more comfortable picking any choice because I think a definition of the event is very ambiguous in this case because we don't know. Does it mean the consecutive days of this event, or if there is only gap in one day in between the cold spell, what is the definition of the event and so on? So I can go any direction, but I think that once again, focus has to be on what is the best way to help ratepayers to minimize their potential bill for incoming month. So to me, that I think our utilities are doing well on that part, so I'm more comfortable.
I agree. Commissioner Tuma.
You know, just on this,
Your mic.
is on. I'll probably eat it. Doesn't sound very loud, but
You're still in the doghouse for last
yeah,
week.
apparently. Mr.
Microphone's
Derryberry, can
the
you
only
hear
one I
me?
hear
If
from
Mr.
you.
Derryberry can hear me, that's all that matters.
I can hear you, Commissioner.
Oh, good. I wasn't going to talk to you anyway, so you're good. You can turn your mic on.
Thank you.
Ms. Hinderly, you pointed out if we're at an apocalyptic event, actually I would want to have the 21 days. I think we actually called the utilities in before 21 days on Uri. So I think the expectation of having them come in 21 days in an apocalyptic event, like gas spikes that would go beyond 14 days or we're going to call them in anyway. So I mean, at least we set the standard that they're expected to come in and tell us what's going on, because that's going to change a whole lot of what we're going to be doing. So that's not a question. It's just the way I see it. Is I agree with Commissioner Partridge. C makes most sense to me, even if it's an apocalyptic event. What I wanted to ask you, and you pointed out in your analysis of Great Plains, and no offense to my Great Plains friends, I just thought they weren't making as much progress, and that's the way I read your comments on it. Pointed out, and our staff commented on it, and that OAG recommends that Great Plains required to be more deliberate in seeking to improve incorporating its curtailment decisions into its gas supply process. And so I agree with that assessment. I thought their handling was fine in their little test run that we had here this year, but it showed that, you know, some of the things they were doing before were needed to improvement. So I'm not panicking about it, but I think it was right for you to call them out. And I just want to make sure you feel that decision option, basically 6, 7, and 8 encompasses that you're going to get enough information from that, where Great Plains has to give us more details on that report they've done, and then this rolling in the decisions regarding how curtailment affected, as opposed to, I was kind of tempted to specifically call them out, but if you're satisfied with 7 and 8, 6, 7, and 8 kind of accomplishing what your concerns were, I'm fine with it too. So,
Ms. Hinderly.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan, Commissioner Tuma. I think we're satisfied with the kind of more official recommendations in 6, 7, and 8 for Great Plains. I think, you know, I do appreciate that Xcel and Centerpoint, having filed a rate case since the Commission required them to incorporate economic curtailment more specifically into their tariffs, are a little ahead of the game just by the virtue of that requirement. At the same time, we do believe it's very important for every utility to be looking at their interruptible customers and ensuring that they are incorporating their, you know, that function of their taking service into their gas supply planning for both economic and reliability purposes. And to that end, you know, we want them to not only be reporting on what more they're doing, you know, to incorporate into gas supply planning, but also ensuring that interruptible customers curtail when called on. That's something that we, you know, look at regularly in rate cases and things to that effect. But these folks do get a significant rate decrease, you know, for being interruptible customers, and they need to be complying with the calls for interruption, not only for economic purposes, but for reliability purposes as well. So that's something that we think was mostly a oversight in terms of the original, you know, kind of forward-looking mitigation factors. I think we talked a lot about kind of changing the two-tiered tariff system, and we didn't talk a lot about, kind of annual reporting on interruptible customers. So that's, us seeking to bring that into the conversation, in addition to the long-term gas supply planning hedging tools that Commissioner Hom discussed. We also have these short-term abilities for the utilities to use interruptible customers, peak shaving facilities, potentially in the future customer calls for conservation if that's something that can be developed, that we want to be looking at annually too.
Mr. Chair, I called out Great Plains, so if they want to respond, they can. I don't want me to call him out, not give him a chance to
There he is, Travis. Okay.
defending himself.
Yep. Mr. Jacobson, if you could just introduce yourself for the record.
Travis Jacobson, Great Plains Natural Gas. So I would just say specific to Great Plains, we have done a number of things, and I'll point back to Winter Storm Uri as my starting point. We have made changes in our gas supply procurement. And I don't know if you guys are all familiar, but we have removed Great Plains, North Dakota from our Great Plains integrated system. And what that did then was it introduced an increase in our storage. So that is a flexible supply portion of our entire supply that we can use, particularly at a greater level during cold weather events. In terms of compliance with curtailments, we do report those in our AAA, and in decision point number 9, that's where it's pointing out that we do report that. And Great Plains has almost perfect compliance with curtailment requests. So we don't have an issue with curtailment. We have made changes, and I think it's 13. I can't remember. One of them talked about voluntary curtailments by firm customers. So we did do a study on that. The study was, I'll say, less than encouraging in terms of how many people would curtail if given a choice. So we're still working through that, but we have made steps in that direction as well. So the communication side of that, we do all of the social media channels, et cetera. So with that, I just would offer those comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson.
And
Mr. Tuma.
I'm going a different direction, so if someone has some more questions along this line, go right ahead.
Ms. Partridge.
Thank you.
Commissioner Partridge, sorry.
Whatever's fine.
Whatever. Hey,
Mr.
whatever.
Chair. I almost called you Chair Stevens, so it's all good. I just wanted to clarify with Mr. Jacobson on were you referring to number 6, which said that Great Plains will summarize your report on voluntary conservation? Is that the one you were referring to just a moment ago?
It was,
Okay.
Commissioner. Apologies.
No, that's fine. Thank you so much. And just for what it's worth, I think I would be very interested to see the findings. I think that this issue is really quite interesting. Both the curtailment and all the many factors that go into a large customer being able to curtail, and then, for the residential customers and other customers to voluntarily curtail their uses. It's very complicated, and it often depends on the specifics of whatever the event is. So I'd be very interested to see that report. And now I'm done.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Partridge. Commissioner Tuma.
Mr. Edstrom, number 10, I agree with it, but I always, again, probably more time asking the question than it would be for our order writer to write about it. But my understanding, the way it works right now, if we don't do number 10, they're still going to continue to comply with order points 3. So we really don't need to clutter up our order with it. I mean, I agree with you. It should be called out to make sure it's important to do. But do we need to clutter our order with order point 10?
Mr. Edstrom.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan and Commissioner Tuma. Good point. Yeah, you're right. I don't know that there is a reason for 10 if the current reporting continues.
And I think it should continue to be reported. I think it's worth calling out, but save Ms. Keller a little time, I guess, not having to write about it.
Chairman,
Commissioner Partridge.
I know this was not a question for me, but I did go back and look at the previous order, and the way the order was structured is different from how we often structure it. So I think it was order point 15 required the report, and then further up were all the different requirements. So it wasn't abundantly clear that if we just said continue reporting, that those pieces would be captured in my mind. And I conferred with our legal team that it might be something we need to restate or restructure in this order to make sure that those components are continued throughout future reporting. It's just a very administrative type of thing. So I know that it is a couple extra copy and pastes, but I'm not sure that the way the order was structured would necessarily indicate that those pieces will continue to be reported.
So does 10 accomplish that, or
Yes.
it does accomplish that then?
I think so. And I think if we just restructure the order a bit to say, continue filing these compliance filings that include, and then put those pieces in, we probably never have to say it again. But the way the old order was structured, it was out of order for some reason, if that makes sense.
So even though my natural inclination when I hear continue, our order writer will have to do a little bit more work to clarify what we actually intend with 10. And that should be able, something we can add internally without necessarily needing to change this decision option.
I think so, but
Mr. Edstrom, it has your name next to it, and I was going to ask Ms. Hinderly too, because it has her name next to it. So if you want to punt to phone a friend, I don't care. I was just trying to save a little time, but now I've actually made more time, so.
Mr. Edstrom.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan, Commissioner Tuma, and thanks for that explanation, Commissioner Partridge. I hadn't recently relooked at that language in the earlier order, so with that understanding, if it's not so onerous to repeat it, maybe it would be helpful. But
repeat and clarify, I think, is what we need to do, is what I think the question is.
All right.
Commissioner Tuma, we're happy to defer to the commission and staff on whatever they think would be most clear. I think clarity is always worth a couple extra keystrokes.
You're probably right about that. Commissioner Tuma, you wanted to take a different direction.
Well, that was a different direction.
That was the different direction? All right. Well, we've had a good conversation here. I feel like our time for questions is ended. Who would like to raise their hand and make a motion? Otherwise, I will just call on one of you.
Chair
Commissioner
Sullivan,
Partridge.
I would like to propose a slight modification to a decision option before I make a motion, if we're ready for that. So on number 13, I am going to propose, hold on, I've got some language, that we modify that a bit to say the utility shall notify the commission of a pricing event within 3 days of the first day gas prices spike to 5 times the PGA cost. And then to add on either A or B, whichever one, they're the same to me.
Let's get this thrown up on the screen so we can all take a look at it. I think Ms. Kaler are you?
I did not send her anything. I'm being awful to her.
We're calling an audible.
This is my fault, everyone. But the idea here is that we would say notify us, and that can be 2 sentences, that can be a paragraph. Just notify the commission within 3 days so that if we want to have a meeting to talk about the event and things that we could potentially do, we've got that notice. Won't take anybody away from the important work of making sure that we continue to do what we can to get through that event. And then 14 days after the event, I think, Ms. Kaylard, I think you'll be getting some language shortly in your inbox, or perhaps you have it. And then 14 days after it ends, then the utility would come in with more detail and information that we could look at in retrospect. But this gives us an opportunity to both get that immediate notice and give the utility time.
I've just been told staff would appreciate what form of notification, either an email or a filing.
I think filing would be, unless other commissioners have an opinion otherwise. I feel like a filing would be helpful so that it's publicly available.
I mean, Commissioner Hahn.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. I think we have to make a balance here. I think filing is okay, however, but the content, I think as utilities said, they are busy managing situation, having more detail and more information in that filing can divert their attention from managing the situation. So what sort of content are we contemplating in this notification? So if it is a simple saying, yes, price is going up, I think they can do it, probably, even though it's a filing. But if you're asking a lot of detail, so
I was thinking, Commissioner Partridge, an email to the executive secretary, which would inform all of us. We would be getting the information. Nope, getting the head shake on a no. That looked like a hard no, too, from legal.
Yeah, I think it should be filed in the docket, just to avoid any ex parte
We're gonna go with that.
issues.
It could be an email that filed.
Sure.
Yeah, either way, in my mind, I'm not looking for a lot of detail. I don't want to take the utilities away from the important work that their teams need to focus on. I'm trying to balance this need for more immediate notification and the desire for us to have better data that could be contained in a future filing. So it was just trying to
Do we want to?
compromise on
I will
those two
offer
things.
this. I was going to take 5 minutes after this break, or after we were done with this. Do you want to just take like a quick 10-minute break right now so we can get this language done and then come back and then we'll just go through the rest of?
Yeah, that's
And
fine.
does that sound good? We can just get the language. Does that work? We're good? Ms. Kaler? Okay. We're going to be back in 10 minutes. back. Welcome back. I think we have some language.
Yes, we do. Ms. Callert, would you pull the language up on the screen for the new 13? Thank you. And teeing this up, again, the idea is utilities would file a very simple notice that would just have the date at which the price spike started and the hubs that are being impacted by that particular price spike. And so that very simple notice would be filed within 3 days. That would provide information to the commission, but also to the Department of Commerce, the OAG, and others. Would allow us to understand what's happening and perhaps take action if there was something we could do. So that's the idea there. But there are 2 data points only, so as to keep it very simple.
All right, that seems.
And then the second part is reflective of the previous order, which is already in place, which just requires that then 14 days after the last day of the event, you would then do the same filing you're already required to do, but you get more time to do it. So really the only thing that we're asking utilities to do on top of what they're already doing is that 3-day notice with 2 data points.
Who wants to
Ms.
start?
Stasny looks very concerned.
Ms. Stasny.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioner Partridge, for putting together the decision option. I am not very concerned.
Oh.
I do overthink things. So my one concern is the number of days. So if the event falls on a Friday and 3 days ends up being a holiday Monday, we can make a filing, but it won't be accepted in the e-dockets until the day of business. So I just logistically, again, overthink things probably unnecessarily, but just want to flag that.
10 business days?
No, absolutely not. Oh,
I mean, I guess I recognize that issue. I also think that we are to the point before we're going to start hearing about this.
yeah.
It'll be percolating. So I kind of like 3 days, recognizing that it's not going to be reflected immediately in e-dockets, but I don't know.
Yeah.
We deal with this all the time. A lot of things fall on the weekend.
Mr. Luce?
Yep. We just wanted, with 13, we just wanted some clarity, so sounds like we have it.
Thumbs up. Excellent. Ms. Steinhauser?
Thank you, Commissioner Partridge. We're good with the language, and I would also just add that there's informal notice that does happen with these events.
Sure.
So even if the holiday issue does come up, our expectation would be that notifications would be happening.
All right. Think this works.
Okay.
All right. Would you like to make the overall motion?
Yes, if there are no objections to that, thank you, Chair Sullivan. I will make an overall motion. So I move decision option 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, new 13.
All right.
So no 11 and 12, anything on those?
Oh,
I don't think we have to deny.
no, I think just by not doing it, we're just keeping it consistent with the old order. Is that, that's my understanding.
Mr. Andringa, that, Okay.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't overlooked.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Partridge's motion is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, and the new 13. Are there any questions or comments on the motion? I support it. Anybody else? Thumbs up. All right, with that, we'll move to voice vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Thank you to the parties. Thank you to staff for the work on this. We appreciate it. And we can now move on to the second item for the day. If the parties could come to the front. And I believe that Mr. Janasek will be introducing the matter in a second. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Chair Sullivan and Commissioners. Agenda item number 2 is docket number 22422 in the matter of the application of Summit Carbon Solutions LLC for a routing permit in Otter, Tail, and Wilkin counties.
Mr. Janasek, could you just maybe a little closer or talk a little bit louder?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, there we are.
There we go. The question before the Commission is, should the Commission reconsider its February 21st, 2025 order as modified on March 10th, 2025? Staff and parties are available for questions. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And we'll just do a quick round of introductions. Ms. Meridian.
There we go. Thank you, Chair Sullivan. Sarah Meridian for QR.
Right.
And I believe my colleague Hudson Kingston is online as well.
Okay, Mr. Kingston, if you just introduce yourself.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan, Commissioners. Hudson Kingston on behalf of CURE.
Great, thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. Good to be back. Patrick Malberg on behalf of Summit Carbon Solutions. James Powell is online for the company, and Scott O'Connick is in the room.
Okay, I'll just have them introduce themselves if they. Mr. Powell.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is James Powell. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Summit Carbon Solutions.
All right, and then just to get this out of the way in case we have to make questions.
Thanks, Chair Sullivan. Scott O'Connick, Project Manager, Summit Carbon Solutions.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connick. All right, we will now move to, we have no opening questions planned, but I will move to Commissioner questions. Are there Commissioner questions? Commissioner Hom.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. For the Summit Carbon, during the South Dakota proceeding or your media discussion that companies thinking about rerouting possibly given what happened in the South Dakota. So what's going on with that discussion?
Chair Sullivan, Commissioner Hom, there are proceedings going on in front of the South Dakota Commission. The company is preparing its response to the most recent order about that path forward. I don't want to get ahead of that. It is in response to recent legislation and decisions over there. If we look at the current posture, the company is assessing the project and the proceeding over there and is charting its path forward through South Dakota.
Okay, thank you. I'm done.
Commissioner Hom. Mr. Malberg, with regard to South Dakota, I just want to, my understanding is now the company has pulled its application in South Dakota. Is that correct?
Chair Sullivan, that's not exactly
yeah.
correct. It is currently pending what is going to be decided with that current application. The company had asked for a delay or holding the proceeding in abeyance while the options are assessed. I think there's a filing due by not later than the 22nd in that regard.
Okay. Did you have anything additional? Okay. Commissioner Tuma, Commissioner Partridge?
I do not have any questions.
I guess one question that I'll have, Ms. Meridian, is I've reviewed the record, and when I look at the information that you put in the record, it wouldn't change my decision, but I'll give you a last shot to, convince me why I should change my decision.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. I think we've already said what we're, able to say in the record. I would say I think the information about South Dakota, what we've just heard now, I think that at the very least, you should strongly consider option 2B, just to kind of cover the bases that were already done in your previous order with North Dakota. But I understand what you're saying, and yeah, we just disagree on what's in the record.
Yep, sometimes we do. Let me just take a quick peek here. Give me a second. Just want to look at that. You mentioned option 2B.
Chair Sullivan,
Pardon?
may I follow up?
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Meridian. So my understanding is this would simply add South Dakota into this decision option. So we predicated the approval of the Minnesota line on the North Dakota project going forward. North Dakota is the hub, and then there's lots of lines that come off of that North Dakota project, one of which will go through South Dakota, which is now facing a different context around eminent domain. I think from my understanding, this is maybe a question for both parties that are here today, is that North Dakota is really the crux of the project, and that as long as the North Dakota piece is viable, then the Minnesota line will go through. And if the South Dakota line is required for the North Dakota project to be economic, then the North Dakota project is, as our backstop, would remain a reasonable protection and backstop on the permit. So, Mr. Malmberg, can you tell me, is that your understanding? And then I'll ask you, Ms. Meridian, the same.
Chair Sullivan, Commissioner Partridge. So, for context, where the line, where the line crosses the Minnesota-North Dakota border is not going to change, regardless of whether that line ultimately connects on the north side of South Dakota, which it does currently. Right, line 321 connects in, I believe, McPherson County. The order as drafted, I think, is adequate in terms of we need the sequestration site and the pipeline necessary to move the CO2 to that sequestration site in North Dakota. Even if South Dakota, even if there is a change, we still need to go through North Dakota and to that sequestration site. So the South Dakota piece, amending to include it doesn't affect any of the route here in Minnesota.
Thank you for that. That was a helpful line for me. You wanted to go to Ms. Meridian, though. I'll let you finish that, Ms. Meridian.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan and Commissioner Partridge. I'm hearing what the company is saying, but I think we attached a map, attachment A, to our petition, and that clearly shows that although our portion in Minnesota does connect right into North Dakota, it then dips down into South Dakota before then going back up into North Dakota towards the site that they've indicated. So I think that's the concern for us, is that it's not like we're just drawing a straight line across North Dakota, in which case, of course, then you wouldn't just need that backstop, as it was said, about North Dakota permits and the sequestration permits as well. But because it dips down into South Dakota, and there are now questions about the viability and how things are going to work out in South Dakota, that's where we're concerned that we could kind of get started a little too early while things in South Dakota are still up in the air.
Commissioner Partridge.
My question was answered. I just, I think the viability of the project remains really centrally at the North Dakota hub and sequestration site. And so I do understand that the South Dakota change in policy could affect the economics of the overall project, but I still think that the core is going to be the North Dakota piece. And if the economics fall apart based on a South Dakota change in policy, I still think it will, I'm trying to think of a good analogy, but I'll butcher it if I try. So if we cut off blood supply in South Dakota, then it will, either the North Dakota project will, reroute or die off. And either way, that remains kind of the backstop that I think the commission chose initially and remains, I think, valid and protective. So I appreciate Kier bringing this forward. I think this was an interesting new development, and I think it was worth bringing to our attention, so I appreciate that. However, nothing in the record for me changes that initial decision, and so I am not looking to reconsider the matter personally.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Partridge. I find myself in the same spot. I did want to ask the company another question, since you're here in public, and this is when I get to talk to you about this stuff, is that as far as and if you can't answer, I understand. But in looking at the map, and this is something I've had, is are you able to say, are there alternatives to South Dakota? I mean, I suppose you could go up through Minnesota, but you could also go west and, through Nebraska, there, even points further westward. Are you able to say what you're thinking? That's really what I'm getting at.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. There are options out there, even within South Dakota. Like Governor Roden himself said, that was not an intent to stop the project, but maybe to reset and, work through a route. Just like Minnesota doesn't have, CO2 under eminent domain, South Dakota is the same way. And, the work that we've done in South Dakota has already put us in a very good spot, even with easements and such, mainline and all that stuff. It's a process that's been worked on for a long, long time.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Tuma?
I'm ready for a motion if your questions are done. So
I'm ready, and I do appreciate the conversation here. I'm happy to make the motion. Let me get to it really quickly here.
Number one.
Let me look at it before I am sure you are right, Commissioner Tuma, but let me just get
It's okay.
to it.
I was just trying to help you out.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, in reviewing the record and in reviewing the filings, I'm still convinced that our decision is I would make the same decision today. So I will move decision option 1 to deny the petition. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Tuma.
And to the applicant, Commissioner Hom's question is legit because we're hearing whispers about, are you going to just go around South Dakota? The obvious route is through Minnesota. And I can tell you my decision would look a whole lot different, and I'm only one of 5, about how we proceed with our EIS and that through Minnesota than what we did in this one. It was so short and insignificant. We're on the tail end of a possible line that you could still do in North Dakota, maybe if South Dakota doesn't want to participate. So we wanted to leave that option open to you. And I agree with Commissioner Partridge that it's not going to happen in North Dakota unless North Dakota makes a way for you. And so that we're protected. We don't need to have South Dakota in there. But I'm of the opinion how we would do the permitting of this facility, if it were Minnesota, the main line, would be a lot different. I would want to see commitment from landowners. It's probably what you're going to have to do in South Dakota too, is my guess, and so we're watching that closely. But I would want to know that there is a solid commitment. We're long down the road, 80, 90 some percent, before we even start doing an EIS, that you have the landowners kind of lined up. So it's a little different than our prior conversation that your attorney had to suffer through here a week ago. And so it'll look a lot different, and I don't know how it will look, but I can tell you I'm going to want to know that we're not just permitting, I think, as your friends from Cure say, a project to nowhere, okay? We want to make sure that we already have some landowner buy-in and you have a route. And we know that makes it challenging. We get that, but given our scenario, I think it needs to have, we need to see a big buy-in in the rural area, and you got the landowners locked up. And so if you are considering Minnesota, just so you know, it's not going to look similar to what we just did. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Tuma. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. Thank you to the parties, to staff, and we can now move on to our last item of the day. And Mr. Duran will be coming up to introduce the matter. And then if the parties involved would come to the desk, we can start with, after it's introduced by staff, we'll start with introductions. Mr. Duran.
Good morning, Chair Sullivan and Commissioners. Item number 3 is docket number 25-76 involving Xcel Energy in the matter of a formal complaint and petition for relief by SunShare LLC against Northern States Power Company doing business as Xcel Energy regarding settlement agreements. The question before the Commission is, should the Commission investigate the formal complaint and petition for relief by SunShare against Xcel? SunShare did file yesterday their preferred decision options, as well as a new decision option 12 that has been dismissed to you guys with a handout. And if anyone here needs that, they're in a pile over there. Parties are available for questions. Staff has no additional comment. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Duran. We'll start with introductions. Ms. Lee, if you could.
Good morning, Chair Sullivan, Commissioners. Amber Lee with Stoll Reeves on behalf of SunShare, and we do have representatives from SunShare in the room and online.
Good morning, Commissioners. Amrit Hundal, Assistant Attorney General on behalf of the Department.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Peter Teglin for the Department.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Jim Dennison on behalf of Xcel Energy.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Curtis Zahn on behalf of Mencia.
All right, great. Thank you. All right, let's move to Commissioner questions. Any Commissioner questions? Otherwise, I will kick it off. I'm going to start with, and just so folks know, I do want, when we move to a vote, there's going to be 3 separate votes. We're going to vote first on decision options 1 through 2, then we'll take a separate vote on 3 and 4, and then a final vote on the remainder of the decision options. That's just the way that I've decided we're going to organize this. So just wanted people in the room to know that's how we're doing it. I'm going to start with some questions unless somebody else wanted to go. But I'm going to start first with Xcel. Mr. Dennison. Mr. Dennison, I understand that you've requested an opportunity to respond in writing to the expanded scope of the complaint, but your position is that the MNDIP section 4.3.6 requires Xcel as the area EPS operator to coordinate with and refer projects with potential adverse impacts to MISO, which is, as you know, the transmission provider in the RTO. Is that correct? Is there anything additional you want to add on that?
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. Yeah, in the context of the studies that are issued here, MISO would be the transmission provider. I want to be careful how I speak because we have a different docket addressing internal transmission studies, where in that role, Xcel Energy would be the transmission provider. I just want to make sure I'm very clear about that. Thank you.
Okay. And then going back to the second question for Xcel, going back to the notice and comment in the spring of 2022 on the ASIS agreement that SunShare describes, did Xcel understand that MISO's adoption of the AFS for all of MISO superseded any need for an individual agreement with MISO and Xcel? So was there any need for additional commission action on that specific point? Did we need to clarify something for you, as I think that...
And thank you, Chair. There was no need for clarification. The MISO ACE-SIS study that was the subject of the March 22 order has never been implemented.
That's the affected system impact study, just to be clear. Yep.
Yes. And instead, MISO, through their Tariff X, has issued their BPM or business practice model. And that's what it's operating under today. So no, that operates, MISO wide. So there is no individual agreement in that context with Xcel Energy.
Okay, thank you for that. Now I'm going to ask a question of Ms. Lee. Ms. Lee, in looking at this and reviewing the record and the documents, I get stuck at the projects, SunShare's projects, clearly we're going to have more than an impact. They're larger than 1 megawatt, or there's going to be an impact. And in that context, MISO's BPM is really clear. If it's going to be larger than 1 megawatt, is an impact to the bulk transmission system. They're going to have to do an affected system study. I guess I'm just trying to get into the mind of SunShare. Why did they think that why would they think that would go fast?
Thank you.
Because, I mean, I don't want to speak for any developers, but MISO affected impact studies have a habit of throwing a monkey wrench into everybody's plans. So.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan.
To be technical.
Monkey wrench, technical term.
Yeah, so I think that certainly the MISO BPM does speak for itself.
And it's public, it's clear, anybody can look at it.
Yes. I think when we were entering the settlement agreement, the effect of the new implementation of the MISO DER AFS and the timing of it and the scope of it and the actual process of it wasn't on our radar. And I don't want to speak for any of the developers, but I don't think, from what I can tell, it wasn't on a lot of people's radars. And looking back now as to why the ACES agreement wasn't implemented, why that was put on hold by the Commission, and some of the work that the Commission wanted Xcel and the utilities to do around synchronizing the processes wasn't done. So I think in my mind, there was a gap between MISO rolling out the DER AFS and the Minnesota utilities implementing it in MNDIP.
See, I hear what you're saying, but I think about it and I just think, on its face, these are projects that are going to impact the bulk transmission system. And this is clearly stated in the BPM. The MNDEP also refers back to the BPM or refers to the MISO transmission process. It just, to say that there wasn't notice, it feels to me like it would be clear, it'd be obvious if I were developing a project of that size that it would impact, that there would be an impact, and you'd have to deal with a MISO affected system study, and that's just clear on its face. Mr. Zahn, you look pensive. Do you have a thought?
Chair Sullivan, no, I think I agree with Ms. Lee as far as this had, Xcel had tried to change the interconnection process before, and the Commission said, no, hold up. We want to talk about this a little more.
And so I think we all expected there to be, some discussion, something, for this new process, and everyone expected probably the ad hoc process to be continued instead of this quarterly process. So even if it would have been affected, presumably it maybe could have gone through that process quicker than it did under the new process. And so I think, and obviously this is the subject of another docket, but we thought the MNDIP would continue to be implemented the way it had been as the commission had directed until there was some further direction from the commission, including implementation of this new DER AFS.
But like the MNDIP can't trump the MISO interconnection process. And I mean, the MISO has jurisdiction over the bulk transmission system. So if there's an impact to the bulk transmission system, there's literally nothing MNDIP can do that's going to stop it. And that feels to me like within our parlance, not common knowledge, but that is going to be clear to anybody who's involved in this system, is that if there is going to be an impact to the larger bulk transmission system, MISO is going to come in and say, we have to study it. So I don't know why it has become the matter of a complaint, is what I'm getting at.
And Chair Sullivan, you're absolutely correct. I mean, no doubt that obviously when a system impact study shows a potential for a transmission system impact, MISO needs to study it. There is absolutely no dispute about that. But I think everyone's under the assumption that the kind of ad hoc process would continue until there was some further action by the commission, and if there are changes, and even MISO kind of said, hey, we're making some changes, go work with your commissions. And it's really clear from all their directives that, when we make changes, we're not, we recognize the authority of state commissions, and you need to make your own changes in your own states. And so I think reasonably, stakeholders are waiting for that process to happen because it had previously been kind of started, and we're just kind of waiting for that to happen and expecting that the ad hoc process would remain until this new process came up, which does seem to kind of batch them, which adds additional time as opposed to the prior ad hoc process.
Okay. Any additional questions? Commissioner Hom?
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. I think you asked most of the question I was going to ask. Because my frustration in this is there is not much Xcel or Minnesota Commission can do about federal tariff. And the complaint is about that portion of it. That is my concern here. Set aside the facts, even if MISO changed their mind in the middle of this discussion. I mean, the right place to complain about this is at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission about how they changed their process in the middle of it, not the State Commission. As Chair Sullivan said, Xcel has to abide with NERC reliability requirements and MISO tariff as a MISO transmission owner members. So I don't know what we can do here beyond telling you that, yes, this is a wrong venue to complain about. If you have a concern with the MISO change their process, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission is the right place to discuss about that issue. Otherwise, I think as a business owner, SunShare has to do your due diligence to find out what's going on at the MISO. And I think last year I was all over the place asking Minsia and all those developers fully participate in MISO process. Your work will be hugely impacted by MISO action or inaction. So I'm just repeating that once again. Yes, this is what I was trying to say, that yes, they can change their mind in the middle of their process, but we cannot help on that part. Right place to complain about that issue is a Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, not the State Commission.
Ms. Lee.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan and Commissioner Hom. I think SunShare would probably just like to clarify a little bit. It's our understanding that the MISO process rolled out through the BPM, which I also understand doesn't need FERC approval. And the MISO, in adopting the BPM and this particular process, recognized that the interconnection here was state jurisdictional, and that's why they told the utilities to work with the state processes. So I think it's not so much that we contest the MISO process or the BPM itself. We just wanted to see some of the inconsistencies that bled over to MINDIP. We wanted those to be fixed.
The inconsistencies
With
with
MINDIP. Correct.
being, okay. Okay. Commissioner Hom.
Okay, thank you, Chair Sullivan. Yes, BPM doesn't require a Federal Energy Regulatory Commission approval. However, BPM is subject to their FERC-approved tariff. If there is any inconsistency in their BPM, once again, the right place to complain is at the FERC. Being said, if you're concerned with MINDIP inconsistent with MISO tariff, that means do we have to fix it? And what is the settlement violation, or what is the Xcel's wrongdoing in the settlement? Xcel is not the one who created the gap, right? It is a MISO who created the gap. So that's why what should we do to fix it here?
Chair Sullivan, Commissioner Hom. Yes, I think it'd be great if the commission could take this up and combine that issue with the ongoing issue or the one notice for comment in 16.521. That could be the place to look at potential changes to MINDIP to incorporate the MISO process. And we just think that Xcel knew a lot more than we did when we entered into the settlement agreement, including the peak load data for the substations that would trigger the MISO studies. So that is the relief that we're seeking, is that the settlement implicates the process going forward and behind, and the process going forward, in my mind, clearly needs some further review.
So, Xcel, would you like to respond to that point that you knew more about this?
Thank you, Chair. And this gets into what was in their reply comments that we have not had an opportunity yet to submit a response in writing. As we have communicated to SunShare previously, we're not aware of the need for a MISO study until we start the distribution system impact study. None of those had started until after the settlement agreement was entered into and SunShare signed the distribution system impact study agreement. That's spelled out in the MINDIP, and it's echoed in the staff briefing papers. So also the peak load data is not static, it fluctuates. So we did not look into that. It would require a study, and the studies had not yet started because SunShare wasn't in that stage with their interconnection applications.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Tuma.
Whether you knew or didn't know, it doesn't matter to me, and I really don't think you want decision option 1. I think you want decision option 8. So my assumption is that if we get to 8, you don't want to spend waste 28 more days of our time, right?
Thank you, Chair and Commissioner Truman. Yes, that's correct.
And Ms. Lee, I know about settlements. I've lived around them my whole life. And did Xcel have some duty to you to disclose information? You say they knew more. Well, a lot of people know more in settlements than the other parties. Did they have a duty? Where's this duty that now what it seems like you're asking me to do is to go in and undo the settlement. And I'm very, very reluctant, because we always at this commission want you to go to the Birch Room and get it all figured out. So it seemed like you went to the Birch Room, but I don't know what duty they have. I mean, what's going on here that I would interrupt the settlement?
Ms. Lee.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan, Commissioner Tuma. I think that's a very fair question, and we certainly support settlements too. And I want to be very careful because some of the settlement is non-public. Well, actually, the entirety of it is.
So I'm speaking in very general terms.
Yes. And I think maybe at the highest level, Xcel wasn't able to execute the settlement agreement as it was signed.
I don't know what to do with that.
What that means, but
Commissioner Hom?
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. So one clarification. So SunShare is claiming that Xcel may have more engineering information than you. It's not about Xcel knew about change in MISO rule. I was a bit confused whether your concern is Xcel knew that MISO rule will be changed and they didn't let you know about it, or versus Xcel knows more about the engineering data in their substation and they didn't let you know about that information.
Thank
Ms.
you,
Lee.
Chair Sullivan, Commissioner Hom. Yes, it's the latter. And Xcel has said that they wouldn't know we would require a MISO study until we went through the SIS study. But it's my understanding that one of our projects was flagged for MISO before the SIS was complete. So there's factual inconsistencies with what that threshold step is.
Okay, thank you. At least it's not about the process. That's good. I think I got one clarification. So I think that's about engineering judgment and engineering study. I think we may need more record from Xcel in reply on that claim because I don't know whether we have any expertise who can make the judgment on the fly here. So if that is a concern, I think Xcel deserved replying to that complaint and then portion of that concern.
Mr. Dennison?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Sullivan. So what Ms. Lee had referenced, she said that at least one of their projects was flagged for MISO review before the system impact study was complete. That's true for every system impact study. The point is, we don't know how to flag it until after we start the system impact study.
I think she was saying that it was flagged before the system impact study was done.
I think her words in my notes were, it was flagged before the system impact study was complete.
Ms. Lee, I just want to...
That's what I said, but I don't know the distinction Mr. Dennison's trying to make.
Sure. So none of these were started until a month or later.
I think what she's saying, just to be clear, and I want to make sure that I understand this. What I'm hearing is that Xcel identified there was going to be, this project right here is going to have a system impact study, which probably means it's going to backfeed up onto the transmission system. And Xcel did that before completing the system impact study. That's what I heard her saying. And I think what she's saying is, how is that possible?
I don't know how that's possible. Okay. My understanding is that for all of these, we wait until we start the distribution system impact study. Then we pull the most current data we have. And we'll look to see whether or not it's being flagged for an internal or a MISO transmission impact study. And if so, we let SunShare or the other developer know. But we don't do that analysis. We haven't dug into the data until after the distribution system impact study has started. And we don't wait until the end of that distribution system impact study, to let them know. We let them know earlier on. We don't hold back.
Right. Commissioner Hahn, Commissioner Partridge, were you?
You have a question? Okay. Chair Sullivan, thank you. I'm going to just pull us back a little bit and say my very simplistic understanding of this. that is that there is a project that has an agreement with Xcel Energy to move forward, and as I understand it, it is moving forward. And it has to go through some additional process based on MISO's requirements that pertain to all projects that would affect the transmission system. And frankly, I'm very confused why we're talking about it. I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a developer.
6 more years of this.
What did I sign up for?
And that, I have nothing else to say about that. MISO has requirements in place for a very important reason, and I'm not going to question them. I wouldn't take that risk on personally, and I don't think the commission should. We participate with MISO into helping to inform those requirements, but I am obviously not a reliability expert like my colleague, Commissioner Hom, but I just do not understand. Your project is moving forward. In the future, you should definitely expect to go through all of MISO's requirements, and I'm sorry that it delayed it. But Xcel Energy, please confirm for me that this project is going to move forward still. You are still...
Mr. Dennison.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Partridge. So there were 10 applications at issue, right? We put the status as of a certain point in time in our comments. Some of them have since been withdrawn. Others have been sent to MISO. Some have been, have been flagged for MISO. Of those that have been flagged, MISO for at least 4 of them have stated we need a full study and we need payment, and SunShare has not made that payment to us. So they're currently not moving forward. There are, I believe, 3 other studies that MISO has, 3 other projects MISO has reviewed and flagged and determined they need a full study, and my understanding is SunShare has paid for those. So some projects have been withdrawn. A number of projects have been sent to MISO. Of those sent to MISO, SunShare has continued to move some of those forward, and for others, they have not.
Okay.
Mr. Zahn.
Thank you, Chair. And if I could just add maybe one thing to think about is that I don't disagree with Mr. Dennison that obviously when you're going through the normal interconnection process, you go through the SIS and you figure out what's going on, and that's the normal interconnection process. But here we have a settlement agreement, which I don't know the terms of, but I assume that when the parties are coming together, each party knows what the other party wants and whether or not they can fulfill that. And so to Ms. Lee's point is, and to Mr. Hom, Xcel was intimately involved, obviously, with the MISO's DER AFS, like involved with establishing that, understanding it, seeing what's going to impact. And as you pointed out, MNC and developers are not, and we most definitely should in the future, obviously seeing what's happened. But Xcel was intimately involved in that process. And as Ms. Lee also pointed out, and you said, they also know their own system. So when they're coming into this settlement agreement, knowing what SunShare wants to accomplish, I would think their obligation is more than just the normal study process with kind of saying we don't know anything until we go through that. I would think that they have to, at the beginning, think, can we fulfill this agreement knowing what we know about the process and our systems?
So I understand what you're saying, Mr. Zahn, and I'll just say, I think that the normal MISO, first of all, regarding affected system studies, just a high level, we have a whole suite of transmission lines that are being built specifically to address this issue for large developers, the JTIQ lines. 6 of them getting built specifically because affected system studies for projects, Minnesota projects, wind farms and solar facilities in southern Minnesota that are being held up from affected impacts in Nebraska. Okay, we're going to build a whole set of transmission lines to address this very issue. So once you get to a project of a certain size, it impacts the grid. I mean, that's just, if it's distribution size, if it's 40 kilowatt, that stuff can wash out. That's the small. But we're getting projects that are much larger than that. And I know they're connecting at the distribution, they're connecting at a distribution sub, but there's impacts. So we're like right in this gray zone where we're having impacts on the transmission system. And I hear what you're saying, Mr. Zahn, but the physics are it impacts the system. And we don't always know what's going to happen on the front end. And these projects, I don't know how large are the projects, these LMI projects, aren't they being, the application says they're anywhere from 1 to 10 megawatts, is that right?
It's not trade secret.
Assuming it's not trade secret?
I think in general, the SunShare's projects are 1 to 5 megawatts.
1 to 5 megawatts. Not small. I mean, small compared to a 50 megawatt solar farm, but still. I don't know. It feels to me like this is just going to increasingly happen. And everybody has to be aware of it, and it shouldn't bubble up as a complaint to the commission. But
Going to.
Commissioner Tuma.
It's been happening.
It's been happening, yeah.
That's your point. It's not like it's going to happen. Hopefully they'll start diminishing over time once we get these projects complete. But this has been going on. This is what's been driving our lives at SPP and MISO for the last 4 years. So.
Right.
Chair, I'm sorry,
Nope.
Chair Sullivan, if I could just.
Ms. Lee?
I just wanted to quick circle back to Commissioner Partridge, because at least four of these projects have been kicked out and they are not proceeding. And it's SunShare's perspective that the process by which the MISO studies started was very chaotic and convoluted. And we received different information as to the timelines, the requirements, whether SunShare could pause and wait for the next quarter. And in the case of 4 projects where the payment wasn't made, we were informed 13 minutes before the payment was due that we needed to pay $480,000. So I think this just goes back
I want to hear Xcel's point on that. That does seem unfair. What's the...
So, thank you, Chair. And again, this was an allegation in the reply comments to which we have not had the opportunity to submit anything in writing.
Okay.
So my understanding on that is that we gave them robust written notice that the payment was due, and we gave them the due date. They then went to MISO and said, what's the due date? MISO gave them the due date that our payment to MISO is due, and SunShare relied upon that. We have many other projects. We have to coordinate it. We gave them their due date so that we can take all the projects that would be subject to that quarterly review by MISO and then organize it and then give us time to then forward that money to MISO for the projects that are in. So instead of trusting us as to what the due date was, they went to MISO because of breakdown in communication between them and MISO.
When was that date again? What was the date that you told them that the payment had to be made? Because my understanding is you were on notice as of January 21st.
It was actually prior to that. The 21st was the due date, but we'd let them know about that, I believe was early January.
And this will be in the reply.
Well, the reply is not comprehensive.
Got it. Ms. Lee.
It does not tell you the date that we first notified them that payment was due, or the fact that they didn't trust us, went to MISO. And because of breakdown in communication between them and MISO, they created confusion on their own end.
Okay. Ms. Lee?
Chair Sullivan, yes, we would dispute that. And our record shows that MISO told us one date. We talked to Xcel about it. And as late as 2 days before the payment was due, Xcel told us they were internally discussing what the date was.
And what relevance does that have on what we're doing today?
Sorry.
We're trying to undo a settlement, and I don't understand what the relevance is.
I think the second part of that sentence is resolving the inconsistencies within MNDIP would help everyone.
But when you say resolving the inconsistencies within MNDIP, MNDIP seems to specifically refer or defer, like there could be a transmission system level impact, which would be guided by MISO's BPM, which ultimately comes under the MISO tariff. And it seems to already it's already, the ad hoc process is already built into that. Now we're saying we don't want it ad hoc that much. We want it much more specific.
Right. Excuse me, Chair Sullivan. And I think some of this goes back to trying to implement the ACES agreement and some more stakeholder work and understanding that the Commission wanted to see. And from our perspective, that's just not yet been done.
Okay. I am looking at the Department of Commerce. Do you guys want to add anything?
Chair Sullivan, the department isn't taking a position on decision options 1 or 2.
Okay. Commissioner Hom?
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. One clarification I need to have. While you are responding to Commissioner Partridge's question, saying 4 of your projects got kicked out. I want to be very careful about the term kicked out. What does it mean, the kicked out?
It's my understanding Xcel has removed them from the queue.
So Xcel removed your 4 projects from Xcel's own system impact study queue.
Correct.
Okay, so can I ask Xcel?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan and Commissioner Hom. That's not correct. They're still in queue. But they are not in the current study queue for MISO because they haven't paid the fees. If they would have paid timely in January, they would be subject to a continuing study. So now it gets kicked over a quarter, and I don't know if they made the next quarter deadline, if that's come or gone.
Okay,
But
so
they're still alive.
So it is in the Excel's queue, but it is delayed in MISO's study.
Correct.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. So is it consistent with your understanding, or?
Chair Sullivan, Commissioner Hom, I don't believe that's consistent with our understanding.
Okay. I don't know how to resolve that one, but I mean, once again, that's why we may need some reply from Xcel and give us some record to see what's going on.
To what end? That's my struggle. To what end? Do I have jurisdiction to do something here? And it sounds like I don't. That's my problem. I hear somebody wanting to rework the MINDIP system. I can do that, but that's a separate action, not of general application to all developers. Okay. The question here is, do I have any specific authority under this settlement to order something to happen? Certainly, I can hear from the department that they don't want to do 1 or 2, or they want to talk about 1 or 2, but they certainly don't want me to do some other requests in here because we're interfering with your project, and I don't desire to get into that. So I'm fearful of where all this conversation is taking us to an area that I shouldn't do anything. It should be dealt with in the MINDIP process. And I just feel, my perspective, SunShare Adams is in a bad settlement. That happens on occasion.
Okay. Commissioner Partridge.
Okay, a couple of questions here because we're starting to bleed into new issues that weren't in the original complaint. SunShare owed money for these studies. The timing of that payment got confused. There's a delay, but the projects are not dead. So could you just make the payment and then those projects could proceed? Is that
Ms. Lee?
suitable?
Yeah, it's my understanding that the payments were not made because of the confusion on the deadline and that those projects have been withdrawn, meaning, and if I recollect correctly, SunShare was also told you can't delay for a quarter, so if you miss the payment, you're out.
And Mr. Dennison, you said something contradictory to that a moment ago.
Correct. The information I'm given is the projects are still in queue.
Okay.
They can still be saved. but not only did they miss the payment in January, but also they missed the most recent payment deadline. So it has to kick another quarter.
Okay.
With the quarterly cadence of MISO.
So it seems we've uncovered some useful information, which is that they are not dead projects, and that if SunShare makes a payment, they'll get back into queue, and you'll have to wait just like everybody else, and the process will play out, yet those projects can move forward, which seems like the next best thing for SunShare and for everyone. Am I missing something? Ms. Lee, do you think that that is a workable process for you? Trying to make this work for SunShare because the projects are not dead. I assume your client wants them to go forward.
Certainly. Thank you, Chair Sullivan, Commissioner Partridge. Certainly, thank you. That is not my understanding of where we were.
Sure.
So perhaps that is helpful information.
Great. I think we had a breakthrough.
Commissioner Hom was going to ask a question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Sullivan. The follow-up to the department. Also, this is a community solar garden project, I assume, right?
Correct.
So there is a annual cycle at the department. So even if they survive in this process, they may not survive this year's cycle at the department evaluation. So is that your concern?
Chair Sullivan, Commissioner Hom, very much so.
So it is a viable project, but it may not be a viable project for this year. That's your concern.
Yes.
So it's alive, but it's not alive.
And before now, we thought it was dead.
Okay, thank you.
I need to take a couple minutes. I want to talk with staff, and I want to let some ideas marinate. So we'll be back actually in 10 minutes. All right. Or Miss and Susan, okay. We ready now? Okay, do we have any more any commissioner questions? Otherwise, I'm going to put out there what I'm thinking, and then I'll put out a motion. We will still go with the way that I originally said it, but I'm just going to tell people, actually, I'm just going to go with one motion, and then I'm just calling an audible for myself. If you guys don't like that, we can go back to the original plan. But I've been thinking about this, and I don't think when I hear, Ms. Lee, I hear from you, like, you need clarity around the MINDIP, and you acknowledge that, at least at some level, that we should be discussing this in the other docket. I also think, just at a high level, what I said initially about how the MISO process works, I've said this already, but I think it's pretty clear there, if you're building a project that is likely to, or is going to have a transmission impact, that affected system studies are just going to slow things down. That's just like, that should be almost like a kind of like table stakes understanding of how this works.
Lines and taxes, right?
Right. I mean, this is a, big, complicated web, and if you have, a project that is going to backfeed, energy onto the system, that's going to affect it. And so I know that the developers, at least I believe SunShare turned down the opportunity to be a part of the DGWG, where this was discussed. The commission made clear back in 2022 that we were not going to do anything to stand in the way of MISO studies, that MINDIP would not stand in the way of MISO studies. And I think that it's frustrating to me that this has bubbled up as a complaint to us. So what I am going to put out as a decision option is to do decision option 2, which would be to deny Xcel's motion to allow for Xcel to file supplemental comments. Also, I will put out decision option 4 to deny Xcel's motion to strike SunShare's reply comments. I will move decision option 5 to find that the commission has jurisdiction over the issues raised by the complaint, and then decision option 8 to find that there's not reasonable grounds to proceed with an investigation of the complaint and dismiss the complaint. That's where my brain is at. I think that, to the point that I raised initially, this does clarify that that the MINDIP defers to the MISO affected system studies process, that it should be clear for everybody. And that's where my brain is at after the discussion today. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? I know, Commissioner Hom, that's a little different from where you were going, because you were thinking you'd like to hear a little bit more from the company, and I'm happy to have that conversation, but this is where my brain is at. So just for clarity again, that's 2, 4, 5, and 8. Commissioner Hom.
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. I can support your motion. The reason I was trying to give Xcel time to respond and then chance to respond, because we may not have a resolution today. But if we are having resolution today as you propose, I don't know whether Xcel still wants to file any comments on this.
That's what I asked him, and he said no.
Any other comments, or we could just move to a vote? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The motion passes. That concludes the business for the day, and the commission is now adjourned until next week. Thank you.